It's the Weekly Wrap with your host, broadcasting legend Bruce Wolf, and his trusty sidekick, comedian Tim Slagle. And now, without further ado, Bruce Wolf.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap, and now we're going to play for the first time ever. Guess the background that Tim has on his computer. And so we should guess it before you reveal it. I get it, Tim. Okay. I'm going to say we're going to go a second week in a row with the balloon. We got balloons. 99 balloons. Looks like more than that. Could have gone last week. I said you had done the balloons the week before that, and actually it was Gobbler's Knob. So do you have like a bouffant going in the background, or is that just the way you're being keyed?
Yeah, I think it's just the way the green screen is cutting.
That's right. So, yeah, you got a lot of balloons up there, and we'll get to the balloon story in a moment. But first, a little bit of hot air, of course, from Mayor Pete. I read a great article by Jim Garrity in National Review, very lengthy article. I mean, it boils down to that, we hate him, but a lot of lefties hate him, too. Travelers aren't all that happy with him either. So in defense of him, because I'm always for the underdog, I'm not really sure what a cabinet member is really responsible for. I mean, I guess it's taking credit for the good things and avoiding blame for the bad, and he's somehow been blamed. I mean, what were you expecting when you had the South Bend mayor become the transportation secretary? There was a way of shoveling him somewhere. Do you think Rahm Emanuel, had they not sent him to Japan as an ambassador, and why did they send him to Japan as an ambassador? Tim,
he wanted to feel tall.
Yeah, exactly. So, I like to help you warm up here. So would anybody have done better as a transportation secretary? I mean, they're not experts in this stuff.
I don't know. Maybe somebody who actually worked in transportation. Certainly not someone that takes a bicycle to work. I mean, the only quality he had that was suited for the job was a desire for 3 months of paternity leave.
Yeah, which was great.
Offered.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows the cabinet secretaries could do that too. But his whole administration is talking about racism. Everything is seen through a racial lens, and he did change the acronym NOTAM, NOTAM, which used to stand for Notice to Airmen, to Notice to Air Missions. So he was helping with the balloons, working that as well. I just, speaking of the balloons, though, first of all, I'm very happy that the Air Force did not shoot down Rihanna at the halftime of the Super Bowl, because did you see her on that platform when she went up there? I
was watching that thing, and it at first I looked at it. I go, why is she standing on top of an iPhone? And then all of a sudden I went, oh, who sponsored this? Now that Pepsi bailed.
I see.
Who's the sponsor of this halftime show?
She was at least 40,000 feet in the air there, so I really feared for her safety. And
here's a little inside scoop. It's if you remember a few years back, Lady Gaga opened the show by jumping off the top of the stadium. Do you remember that? She like bungee jumped.
You
off.
Vaguely recall. I remember actually enjoying her show because I like a couple of Lady Gaga's songs, whereas Rihanna, I'm not even familiar with any of the songs. But yeah, that's great that she jumped off the top of the stadium.
But I knew someone who was working the Super Bowl at the time. I go, now, did she actually do that?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, she did it, but not then. Is that they filmed her doing it before?
Oh, I see.
And they just ran it on the Jumbotron, which everyone was looking at. Nobody noticed that. Nobody looked up and said, oh my gosh, Lady Gaga is nowhere up there. How did that happen?
That's like at the opening ceremony of, was it the 2012 Olympics in London? They had the Queen actually fly in from the top of the stadium and meet James Bond, I think. So, and it wasn't really the Queen, but
Elton John, maybe.
Yeah, well, same difference. We'll get back to the balloons in just a second. You got me going on the Super Bowl. Did you actually watch the game? I mean,
I didn't watch the game, but I watched all the commercials. So if you want to talk about that, I'm well versed.
I really want to check your man card here a little bit, Elton John basher. I think you're projecting a little, but so the well, okay. There was a ticky-tack call, a holding call in the last couple of minutes, and even Greg Olson overruled Mike Pereira, which you're not supposed to do.
Sure, he touched his back. I saw that.
Yeah, he touched his back. And I don't know that it impeded Simon and Schuster or whatever the name of that receiver is, and
WJOB.
Yeah, and whether that did affected Patrick Mahomes and whether he was going to throw to him or not. It didn't look like it. They have all these different rules for the end of the game. The overtime rule is different for the playoffs than it is for the regular season. Of course, you're not limited to the 10 minutes, but each team gets the ball, even if the first team scores a touchdown. So we have these different rules. We now have this immediate review that seems like it's arbitrary and capricious. You don't have to drop the red flag. It just seems to me like in the last 5 minutes in a close game, you review the ticky-tack call and say, no, forget it. We're not going to go with it because it turned what was a good game. But it could have been one of the greatest games of all time because the Eagles would have gotten the ball back after they after Kansas City got a field goal, and then you don't know what's going to happen. And they might still be playing. That's how evenly matched they were. It bothered me.
No, it ruined. Yeah, it definitely ruined
it marred the game because you shouldn't really call that. But all right, speaking of the balloons, and of course there is no more clarity today than there was last week when you had the balloons in the background. Somebody was theorizing that Biden, and apparently he spoke today, we're recording on Thursday, Biden spoke about the balloons, that he did this as a distraction so that he wouldn't have to talk about his physical that he took, which would also be a bunch of lies. And here's the thing. It's not just nutcases like you, tinfoil hat guys like you, who cover up their bouffants with the hat. It's not. This is like mainstream neocon thinking right now that they're lying about his health report. They're going to lie about what happened with the balloons because we can never get a straight story. The latest story was that the first one, which they didn't tell us for at least 10 days or whatever, was that they'd actually tracked it and it was going toward Guam. And then it went over, the United States. We didn't know about that for a long time. Now they're saying they think it's a commercial vehicles that were in the air, but nobody could really describe them well. And nobody knows anything about it. So, yeah, how are we going to trust?
When they said the one was an octagon, what that makes me think of is like a toy drone.
Okay,
that's all I could think of that would be an octagon shaped object.
So we're spending $400K to send these missiles.
$800K
knock out a toy.
The first one missed.
right, and to knock out a toy.
And do you think China and the Soviets know what that was? I mean, they're not telling us, but I get a feeling that China and the Soviets both know exactly what they shot down, and they think it's funny as hell.
Oh, okay, yeah, great. So, anyway, somebody said that asked why was it again that they didn't shoot the first one when they first spotted it, and obviously, it's because the Chinese are in cahoots with Trump to get him reelected. Maybe that was me who said that, but I mean, I don't even know. I could be plagiarizing myself right now.
Boy, after they waste the virus getting him out of office, now they're right. Sent over a balloon to get him back in. Well, that was supposed to work in his favor, and it just backfired, I guess. But obviously, we shot it down because it was noticed. If it hadn't been noticed over Montana, we still wouldn't know about these balloons. I think we can all agree on that, right? Yeah, absolutely. That's
Okay.
somebody accidentally photographed it.
Speaking of flying objects, let's turn to locally the situation at O'Hare Airport. And apparently, the travelers who are flying in and out of O'Hare have to deal with the homeless. at O'Hare. Now I saw a Daily Mail story. London Daily Mail even had this that said there were thousands sleeping in at O'Hare. Whenever the TV does the story about how many flights were canceled, and they say a couple of hundred flights, I never can put any perspective on it because how many flights are there a day? I don't know. But even this raw number, I mean, is it really thousands of people who are in O'Hare? I mean, I can imagine I'm not saying it isn't bothersome. I mean, who wants to, you have a long flight and all of a sudden somebody's at the baggage carousel that, they're blocking it and you can't even retrieve your luggage. How big is this problem?
Yeah, it's a guy sleeping in between two bags, huh? And going around the carousel all night.
This is my bum. Oh, this is my bum. I see. He's wearing
I've actually
Louis Vuitton jacket. Yeah.
Have you ever noticed them? Have you ever noticed them? I've seen I saw one, I think. I've seen
I haven't flown in a while. But I didn't know that. I don't remember ever seeing any. Maybe, backing out of the way, you'd see somebody and usually they also had, a saxophone and we're trying to play.
Yeah.
I confuse.
Yeah, no, there was one. I was getting on the blue line and from O'Hare, and there was a guy, and I remember it because he smelled like he just had an accident.
Oh, well, okay.
And he was in a wheelchair, and he rolls onto the train with a lit cigarette.
Oh, well, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good trick.
Somebody says
that's a busker. I think that's a busker.
Somebody made him put it out, and then he puts it out, and I remember thinking to myself, I would have rather smelled the cigarette.
I have to pick my noxious fumes. Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap.
You can't tell the wolf from Little Red Riding Hood these days. Because it's our red meat is more natural smell. Don't miss the most sensational scene in the history of the screen. Not there. My boy or girl can't tell from here. Myra Breckenridge is a fish. And don't you ever forget it.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap. And did you see Myra Breckenridge in the movies?
I did. I didn't see it in the movies. I was a little bit young, but I have seen it since, and it's pretty awful.
Oh, okay. Well, I actually remember trying to get in to see the movie downtown, and they carded us, and I couldn't get in, and I wanted to see it. And
you wouldn't think, okay, a lesbian sex scene between Raquel Welch and Farrah Fawcett with a half naked Farrah Fawcett could be bad.
Right, but it was apparently.
Oh God, yeah, it's awful.
Well, I mean,
just awful.
It was bad, but I don't know about you, Tim, but today I am at half staff for Raquel Welch having died. Our producer Chris actually made me laugh in his notes to us a couple of days ago. Said it makes a pretty good argument for necrophilia. So when I was let's see, it's easy to lose your train of thought. When I was a kid, we would get the Saturday Evening Post in the mail. All right. And every week. And they had a spread on Raquel Welch in like around 1966. And I remember thinking at that point, she's like about 26 years old. And I'm thinking, I mean, she's twice my age. But you know what, Tim? By the time she died, I'd almost caught up with her. So, I mean, that's almost 7/8 her age. So, yeah, not that I care that much about Raquel Welch, but she was good old number 11 as the Kansas City Bomber. I mean, how many uniform numbers do you remember? Tony, I mean, I could see remembering like a Joni Weston, a real roller derby player. But
I'm surprised
but,
they
yeah.
didn't give her like 44 or something like that. A number
Right. I mean, you think that
they would have a little bit of humor in
right.
there.
Yeah. And they didn't need, you didn't need to with her. You didn't need to with Raquel Welch. So it's really kind of sad. But speaking of so she played a transgender back in 1970s. That's that's pretty out there.
Well,
for,
no, that was kind of
1970.
the thing right about then, right about that time. People were start. I think in Sweden they had finally perfected the first sex change operation.
Well, I remember
so,
Christine Jorgensen.
Yeah.
You could name every person that had, like Dr. Renee Richards. That was it.
Uh-huh.
There were two people in the universe who had it, and I knew their names. But now it's the thing. The one story, the number of stories this week. One of them was about someplace taking out the urinals in a bathroom.
Yeah.
And and I won't stand for this. Boom. Anyway,
there's a word in German. I mean, if you remember the Saturday Night Live stick, they called people girly man. Oh, he's a girly man. But the actual word in German is Sitzpinkler.
That the Germans know how to express so many things
Which means
English
someone, of course,
can never
who sits down when they sits. It's not he's a girly man. He's a Sitzpinkler.
I thought that was like a German word for bidet, but I mean it's close. So anyway, there's a story there we just showed on the screen. The students in New Hampshire getting rid of the urinals. Then there is this woman, Jamie Reed, who she's a queer woman. Politically to the left of Bernie Sanders. I'm reading this, now married to a trans man. And she's basically blew the whistle on the Washington University Transgender Center at St. Louis Children's Hospital, which treats children with gender dysphoria. I mean, basically, she's saying it's a castrating experience for him. And so frequently, the patients declared that they had disorders that no one believed they had. They just went ahead and did these surgeries. There's definitely a backlash against this in the country now. We even talked about it last week, how schools were just going ahead and hiding all this from parents, which I mean, I would make as the number one issue if I were Ron DeSantis or maybe even Donald Trump. So
I don't mean to cut you off here.
Yeah,
Bruce,
no, go ahead.
But I think
Well, I'm slow. I still got my head in the Saturday Evening Post. So.
I encourage castration for any transgender woman who wants to compete in women's sports. That's my opinion. You don't get into the starting block until you're ready to face the chopping block.
And well, the thing is, you'd think that you'd want it because it slows you down. In the swimming pool. There was this New York Times actually tried to do a story, and the New York Times has been at the forefront of promoting transgenderism, but they actually did a story where people were saying, "Hey, Joe, I don't know about this. Maybe we're going a little too fast." They quoted people at its news because there is not a unanimity of opinion on this in the country. Well, they had a whole bunch of people who had written articles for the New York Times write this letter saying that this is bad of the New York Times to do that because they don't want journalism. They want their side expressed. So it was pretty bad. But if everybody were like Raquel Welch, she was a strong argument. Yeah, I think if every transgender woman looked like Raquel Welch, it would be encouraged. It would definitely. It would say more people need this operation. Absolutely. So there's a story about this drug. You ever see these commercials like for Ozempic, where they have more disclaimers? It's close. Where they have more. They have more disclaimers in it than, Yeah,
which cracks me up. The disclaimer that always cracks me up is don't take Ozempic if you're allergic to Ozempic. Wow.
Or if you want to live
That's
past
good
the next
advice.
past 5 years from now, because there's this doctor who says most of the weight loss from Ozempic and Wegovy, whatever it is, comes from muscle loss and bone demineralization. And you wind up losing some weight, like 50 pounds, which is great, but then you get it right back as soon as you're off of it, and you're eating bad to begin with. And the only real way to do it right is diet and exercise, which are so boring and so difficult. However, there's another drug out just now called Mounjaro, Mounjaro. And this guy who had been writing about dieting and having a difficult time for a long time, this guy named Paul Ford, wrote for Wired, and he said, I got this out of the Dispatch. So, he said he had been living the embodiment of the deadly sin of gluttony, judged as greedy and weak since he was 10 years old. But now the sin is washed away by taking this drug. He just desires broccoli instead of, all the bad stuff. If that's true, that's revolutionary.
Mounjaro sounds like a voodoo god, doesn't it?
Oh, totally. And
I like broccoli because I pray to Mounjaro.
Right. Well, now the guy's worried, and he's writing because, if Big Pharma can do this, they could cut out all the other sins as well. and they could do something about climate change. And then what do we do? Well, of course, we're all going to become AIs anyway. Nobody's even going to have a personality anymore. So, I'm glad that, I'll be following Raquel Welch to my eternal reward in not too long a time, because there's not going to be anything to do. Everything will have been done for you. Mounjaro. I mean, they always say that they got. I remember when there was the drug. They used to advertise this in Parade magazine. It was called AIDS, AIDS.
Yeah, the weight loss drug. Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember that.
AIDS.
It was 2 pieces of candy that you would eat before dinner. And I remember it because I remember my mom tried it. And then you eat these 2 pieces of candy before you eat dinner, and you're not supposed to be as hungry. And
it was just ridiculous.
Man,
maybe someday
she ate the whole box in a week.
Well, of course, that's what everybody would do.
Candy.
Maybe someday they'll be able to come up with an AI slim through Mounjaro morning anchor for CNN. Because did you see what Don Lemon? I think did he say this today? He said that Nikki Haley. He was talking about her running for election, and he says women past the age of 50 are not politically viable. I mean, could you believe he said that?
Politically viable? I thought he said past her prime.
Oh,
he said you Google it, women
Yeah.
in their prime, and you will see Don Lemon's picture right now, I'll bet. Ironically.
I mean, the chutzpah of him saying that, and apparently he's going to get away with it. I mean, I'm flabbergasted. Oh, you apparently apologized for saying that. Well, it's nice.
It was Bruce. It was CNN. Who saw it?
No, nobody saw it to begin with. Nobody saw the apology.
I think more people are talking about it than actually saw it.
The only reason I mention that is because it gives me the opportunity to mention the fact that Don Lemon worked for Channel 5 in Chicago years ago and actually refused 2 assignments. And he somehow got away with that. And had this stellar career after it. I worked for Channel 5 years after he did, and I did everything they told me to do, including the traffic, even though nobody has a television set in his car. Okay, so but talent. Don Lemon could get away because talent, right? Tell me about it. Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap.
Breaking overnight, Senator John Fetterman is in the hospital again. The Pennsylvania Democrat was admitted to George Washington University Hospital last night after feeling lightheaded. His campaign spokesperson says initial tests do not show any signs of a new stroke. This all happened while he was attending a Senate Democratic retreat in D.C. Fetterman was seen on Tuesday meeting with Pennsylvania education leaders and attending the State of the Union. Fetterman was in Philadelphia on Friday last week during President Biden's visit. Doctors are running more tests on him this morning, and he remains hospitalized in D.C. for observation.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap. So The latest.
Got any new Don Lemon stories?
Let me tell you about Don Lemon. Yeah, I want to apologize to the audience, the CNN audience, which I think our audience is almost as big as CNN's. Yeah, I've told that story before, I guess, but
last week.
But I didn't add the line at the end last week. The reason he gets away with it is because of he's got talent. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You see there's slight variations on that. Not enough to justify telling the story. Well, here's a story that goes over and over and over again. It's Fetterman. Oh, guess what? Now the latest is that he went into the hospital for treatment of depression, and I don't know why he needs to be hospitalized for that. There's nothing wrong with him being depressed. I'd be depressed too if I had a stroke and was trying to walk into the United States Senate to be a senator. I mean, that's perfectly normal, Senator Fetterman. But yeah,
I have a feeling it's like that dream we've all had where you show up to class and there's a test and you haven't been to class the first time you've been to class. And you haven't studied. You have no idea what's on the test.
I kid you not. I had the dream just a couple of days ago. Channel 5 had asked me to substitute doing the sports, and Don Lemon was there, and I didn't have a shirt, and he wouldn't give me the shirt off his back, and there you go. There will be no more mentions of Don Lemon in this.
I don't know what happened to the Democrat Party that they're now so insistent on electing zombies.
And they just got rid of Dianne Feinstein. Speaking of zombies,
she's
not even sure that she's declining to run.
I actually heard that she didn't even know that she resigned.
Right,
her staff said, "Well, we're doing everything else for her. I guess we can put it in her resignation as well."
Speaking of the senile. President Biden didn't make much news. He said, was it yesterday? The Maryland has its first black governor, and he called the guy a boy.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I'm allowed to use the B word.
Not only that, he used it in with Ebonics. It was I don't know the exact quote, but it was something to the effect of "the boy got play." It was
okay. Well, remember, Joe Biden is black. Okay. I mean, he has lectured others that they're not black. He is black.
Well, he's actually half Puerto Rican.
Well, sure.
Jewish Puerto Rican,
and
I might add.
And, didn't even rescue Nelson Mandela or I think he spent 20 of the 27 years in prison
spent time in prison with Nelson Mandela.
So, cut him some slack, Jack. So the latest, so we're probably going to get Biden running again, and he's going to be running against possibly Donald Trump. If Trump is not indicted for obstruction, but it looks like he is going to be indicted. Agreed?
On what?
Obstruction, because the underlying crime, nobody can get nailed for anymore because Hillary did it, Biden did it, Pence did it.
Can you obstruct when it's not a crime? Because there's no criminal penalties for a president holding on to documents.
Well, there are criminal penalties. The problem is it's never prosecuted.
No, there's no criminal penalties for a president holding on to documents.
Top secret documents. You can't classify documents. You can't hold on to. You can't hold on to those.
Sure,
you got to give them back. I mean, that was the whole idea behind. Yeah, I see. You're never going to be a CNN anchor like Don Lemon is. But anyway,
okay. And even if he's indicted, even if he's convicted, even if they send him to jail, didn't Nelson Mandela run from jail?
Right. I believe that our Constitution is the same as South Africa's. And
no, but there's nothing in the Constitution that says you can't run for president from jail.
I have not read. Was that Article 1?
Jail dissidents run for office quite often.
Yeah, you may be right about that. I did not study enough constitutional law for today's show. But yeah,
It's 35 and
35 years old.
And a
Right.
natural born citizen.
Yeah, I agree. And for a woman, that's a very small window, according to Don Lemon, because it would have to be from 35 to 50. That would be it. And then you can't. You're
35 to
over the hill.
40, I think. 25 to 40. Well, no, 35 to 40.
Well, he said
you
50
couldn't,
was the exit ramp. So, hey, what happened to James O'Keefe? Do we know? I think he's just on leave from Project Veritas because he was abusive to underlings, and nobody did a surreptitious video of him to determine, his innocent.
I was
innocence or
not
guilt.
following that until
Okay.
I saw that they were going to get rid of it, and I said, "How can you get rid of O'Keefe,
The founder.
of Project Veritas? Yeah,
He is Project Veritas.
it's
So
like
how do you
getting
get
rid
rid
of
of him?
Matt Drudge at the Drudge Report."
Right. Right. So Chris is saying Lyndon LaRouche.
Also ran from prison. Yes,
Oh, did he run from prison?
I believe he ran from prison.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right. Turning to some non-Don Lemon news. The first of all, there was this representative, Congresswoman. I think her last name's Craig. I'm not sure. She was attacked in Washington, D.C. And D.C. is, of course, a very progressive city. Even in D.C., maybe they're starting to rethink the whole defund the police movement. And then, of course, the horrible thing, really horrible thing, was just a couple of days ago, the shooting at Michigan State. And I mean, is that near your home turf at all, or East Lansing,
yeah. It's my nephew was going to school at Michigan State. Last semester,
Okay.
and this is interesting. My family is essentially from Oxford, Michigan,
Okay.
where Oxford High, where the shooting was.
Oh,
So
okay.
So my nephew has a nexus both, and my sister is actually a Michigan representative,
Right.
in
Right.
Lansing, Michigan. So
Yeah. So I thought this might have hit close to home for you. And Kevin Williamson had a pretty good column today about how this former prosecutor, I think her last name is Seaman, had.
yeah, that works.
Yeah, exactly.
It might be Simone, but I like the other one better.
Whatever. Siemon. So she had made it tougher to throw these kinds of people in jail. She didn't want to enforce the laws on guns. There was this law that if you committed a felony with a gun, you could go away for a long time. They knocked it down for this guy to a misdemeanor, whatever he had. And sometimes the sentences for misdemeanors and felonies are the same, but there are other charges he could have been brought up on, perhaps. And he might have been in jail. He might have been in jail now.
Isn't there mandatory sentencing for certain crimes, for gun crimes? I mean, that's the one that's going to bite Alec Baldwin in the rear end. Because even if he gets there's a mandatory 5-year sentence for involuntary manslaughter involving a gun.
Yeah. Chris is putting up a story here about the prosecutor Seaman, who said it was standard practice to plead things down to misdemeanor. Well, that's the problem, though. It shouldn't be standard practice, and they just don't want to throw people in jail. As Kevin Williamson writes, it's one thing if you catch a guy with $18 worth of weed on him and he has a gun. It's another thing to have these people who are really dangerous and are likely to commit a lot of more violent offenses and let them go. And 3 people are dead as a result.
Well, and she said the reason why was because of equity.
Of course,
that which is if the Soros prosecutors get their way, we're going to see a lot more of that. We're going to have affirmative action in prison. It's like, I'm sorry, you can't lock up any more black people till you increase the white population of this prison.
Absolutely. Although there's, like I say, there's backlash. That's the theme of today's show. Backlash against what's going on with the transgenders, backlash against Don Lemon, backlash against
Don Lemon doesn't mind backlash, though.
Yeah, exactly. And DeSantis DeSantis was ending DEI, and a lot of people say, "Oh, you can't do this at the universities. They'll hunker down." It turns out that academics don't really like diversity, equity, and inclusion. They don't like it because they know that they're the ones who are going to get it next. Because what they do is they hoist the liberals by their own petard, and academics like their tenure, and they like their academic freedom a lot more than so-called equity. And so there hasn't been that much of support for the DEI bureaucracy in the university system, and DeSantis went after it. Now that's action, and it's not mere rhetoric, and that's why I know that you and I are going to be together and favor Ron DeSantis and try to get him over the top in 2024. Am I right about that or wrong?
I like Ron DeSantis. I like him where he is though, and I don't think the guy looks presidential. Is
too short? He's too short for you?
A little too short,
and not charismatic.
Little too beagle looking,
and not charismatic enough. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's not. He doesn't have you. When you want a president, you want a towering figure. You want a Gregory Peck, a towering Gregory Peck type.
Sure. I think the average height for a president has been like 6 feet. I mean, that goes back to when Civil War soldiers were like 5'4". So presidents have generally been tall.
Yeah.
And
I don't think Ron DeSantis.
Okay. Well, on that kissy face note, let's go on to the next segment. Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap.
Fans should be excited about baseball's changes in 2023 because they're designed to give fans more of what they like and less of what they don't like. Action. They love a faster pace of play. They love athleticism. They love doubles, triples, stolen bases, great defensive plays. And all these rules in testing in the minor leagues have created more of that action, better pace of play, more athleticism, more stolen base activity. And then less of what fans don't like. Fans don't like dead time. They don't like 30 seconds between pitches. They don't like long periods of inactivity on the field. And with the pitch timer and some of the other rules, we've seen a dramatic decrease in dead time on the field. So,
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap. Tim, I mean, do you care? You didn't care about the Super Bowl. You watch the commercials, which, by the way, I enjoyed how tepid they were. I like that. The fact
that they were bad, that they weren't funny, they weren't entertaining, they weren't.
I suckered by celebrities. When I see J-Lo going through the Dunkin' Donuts drive-through, that to me is just a laugh riot. And
wow.
Wow. And you didn't like the Breaking Bad one? I mean, they had Tuco in it.
No.
Tuco was in it, man.
No.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
I didn't like the Breaking Bad one. I didn't like the triangle one. I didn't like the Will Ferrell talking about where EV should be used. Yeah, in zombie apocalypse.
I didn't like because I don't like EVs, but I still got a kick out of Will Ferrell. So I'm easily wowed.
Yeah, a zombie apocalypse. Yeah, where you can still find in a zombie apocalypse, you can still find gas stations that have gas tanks underneath them that are full. There's no way you're going to be able to charge your EV in a zombie apocalypse, which is probably why he got bit. But then the other one, the Jeep one, where all the wildlife was happy that now that their habitat was being torn up by an EV rather than a gas burning vehicle.
Yeah, your
passion. And then they plug in, and then they all say, "Oh, that was a fun day of tearing up natural habitat," and they find a charging station on top of a mountain in the middle of nowhere.
Look, I'm not disagreeing with you at all, but your zeal, your fervor, your passion over the commercials is a little bit outsized because and that's the numerator. The denominator is the passion for the game itself, and you don't care at all. So 1,000 over zero is still zero.
That's when I go for the nachos and wings
right.
during the game.
So do you care about baseball at all? Or no?
I used to before the strike, but what was that, 82?
I cared about it when it was 10. So I don't have any standing to really complain about whether they're putting, speaking of zombies, zombie runners on second base in the 10th inning to get the game going, because I never make it past the third inning. So I don't,
What they're doing? They're putting ghost runners on
they
base.
put runners, and they've been doing this. It was a pandemic era. See, we're still in the emergency, according to Theo Epstein, the pandemic emergency, and they're
until May. It's according to the president. It's going to be
even in
until
baseball.
May.
Even in baseball, it's going to be after that. And they start the inning and the extra innings with a runner on second base. Yeah. Also, they've gotten rid of the shift, which was created by Lou Boudreau, for Ted Williams in the 40s, and didn't really become popular until recently. And they play it all the time. They're getting rid of the shift, but there are so many ways they're going to try to get around it, like maybe bringing in a left fielder to play to the right of the second baseman, and then having the center fielder roam around. But you don't care about this stuff. So.
What is? I don't even know what the shift is.
Okay, there you go. There you go. There's four guys in the infield.
Wow, they look like they're union workers.
Right. So that's the shift, and but they're going to try and get them to pitch faster. There's going to be a pitch clock. All these things to try to make, even though
the bigger bases, I saw the bigger bases,
and the bigger bases, they're pizza box
is that because the players are getting fat? Is that what do you?
Well, it cut down on injuries. I hate to be serious about this, but play your straight man, but it's fine. But it would be nice if during after the head first slide, the runner could just open up the side of the pizza box and get a slice of pepperoni as a reward.
Explain to me, sportscaster, what is the bigger base? What is the advantage of a bigger base?
No, I mean, it's to avoid injuries.
How?
In large, because you won't get stepped on by the spikes when you're sliding in. Yeah, it's to do. I think that's it. It's also, it's going to help.
So it's a two-person.
There's going to be more stealing.
Two-person base.
Right. I mean, they're gonna be like pretty soon. I know. You're afraid they're going to be as big as king size beds before you.
Well, I remember when
CDs.
I remember when CDs came out. They made them bigger to avoid stealing.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know.
Well, that's a good analogy. And yeah. So in other entertainment news, did you see AMC is going to have different pricing for seating depending at a movie theater, depending on where you're sitting, which sounds, like a really good idea. I mean, again, I have no standing because I haven't gone to see a movie in ages. I think Juno was the last movie I saw on Christmas Day about 12 years ago.
Well, there's certain movies I like to see, and when I go, I like 3D and I like IMAX.
Oh, okay.
So I always buy my tickets in advance because they let you pick your seats at AMC.
Right.
You pick your seats.
But
so I pick like dead center of the theater so that your sight line is right to the center of the screen.
Yeah.
And right in the middle.
But that's premium seating, which should be more expensive,
right?
Than
right. A regular one I like sitting right behind the handicap seats because you got a railing to set your popcorn and beverages on.
I think they also should base the pricing on. Let's say you want to walk in halfway into the movie, give you a 50% discount because, like in the old days, we would go into the movies just for the air conditioning. That's what we would do. Did you ever go into the movies? Like you'd go in like 20 minutes into a movie and then stay for the beginning of the movie, the next showing, and say, this is where we came in. I mean, nobody does that anymore, but that's what we did in our day.
They throw you out.
Right.
Of course, now what a lot of people do is because those kids really don't pay attention to anything. Yeah. After the first movie, you go across the hall and start another movie.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
and you actually can spend an entire day.
I've seen that. I've seen how easy it could be done. I have never done that. I can't. I'm just too honest. Are you not too honest? Will you?
Well, I remember when I think it was a Michael Moore film. People wanted to see it, but they didn't want to pay for it. So a lot of people were buying tickets to another movie and walking in so that Michael Moore would not
reminds me
see
of-
there.
Reminds me of Abby Hoffman once wrote a book called, I think it was called Steal This Book.
Steal this book.
So
yeah. I had a
and Michael
copy.
Moore, it's almost de rigueur that you go in and stick it to the man and see his Fahrenheit 1989.
Well, I've always said about
whatever.
Michael Moore that isn't fat communist an oxymoron.
Exactly. So speaking of entertainment here, proud to say my wife and I just finished watching the series Parenthood, which I didn't
Yeah.
even realize it hasn't been on for 8 years. It ended in 2015.
Wow.
But we're just catching up on the culture. And it
well,
was
we just started The Wire.
Oh,
we
my.
Finished The Wire, and that's wild to see. Faxing and,
Oh, yeah.
and being defeated when the burner phones came out, and it was all like, wow, I didn't know that it was a retro series, and it's like, no, just 20 years old.
And
So
it would be difficult for me to see it again because the guy who plays McNulty has been in so many things since then, including playing Prince Charles in
really?
in the, I call it the Queen, the Crown. And you don't realize that the guy, like Hugh Laurie, speaks with this British accent in real life. It kills you when you find out that these guys, these Brits,
you know what I
do an
think?
American accent.
You know what I think is because what I remember when I was a kid, you'd see a Brit trying to do an American accent. They couldn't do it.
Right.
They would do like a Texas accent, or they
Sure.
would do foghorn leghorn. They could do that, but now they can do a perfect American accent.
No, it's really bad, and I
realize
like it.
I think I know why.
Why?
Because this generation of British actors grew up with American TV.
Okay.
Just like I learned how to do a British accent watching Monty Python. That's how they learned.
All right,
American
let's hear
accents.
your John Cleese. You don't have to take off.
It
your
always
pants
comes
and
off
sit
as
at the
Australian, so sounds more like Crocodile Dundee.
John Cleese apparently was complaining he wasn't going to appear somewhere. I forgot because everybody's too woke now, and he's a liberal. See, I love it when they get. I like it when people harass J.K. Rowling. Her video game is like off the charts, but they were trying to boycott the Harry Potter video game. I just like it when liberals get hoisted by their own petard. So that's what
You know
get.
what that phrase means?
Yeah, it
hoisted
doesn't mean
by-
anything that I think it means, right?
Yeah. It's a petard is French slang for a fart.
No.
Yes. So when you say that someone's hoisted by their own petard, it means that their flatulence
Is there an
so...
accent aigu over the first E, like an Egbert Sousse? That was in the second E.
But that's what, hoisted on your own petard means that you're flying around on flatulence.
Okay, I learned so much in this show. It's really good, and it's good because all I do spend the rest of the time doing is watching television. Get an education, everybody. Watch this podcast and tell your friends about it. Next week, more balloons from Tim Slagle. Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap.
And that's the Weekly Wrap on radio and television. Follow Bruce at Bruce Wolf Shy on Twitter and Tim at timslagle.com. The Weekly Wrap with Bruce Wolf, a CP Pods production.